Buonasera a tutti gli amici di GiovedìScienza, benvenuti al Teatro Colosseo.
Your friends from GiovedìScienza, welcome to Teatro Colosseo, the Colosseo Theatre. We'll be talking about a network. This year is the International Year of Light, and we've celebrated it several times. It's very important. There wouldn't be, for example, the internet without optical fibers, and there wouldn't be optical fibers unless there were light. That's in fact, we need light for the optical fibers, but we're going to take an interest in the network from a particular point of view. I've now been talking for 1 minute, and I'll soon stop, but statistically, at least 2 identity thefts have been taken place. The net is not such a safe place as we might like to think. At the end of the year, IT crime corresponds to about 1 billion euros. So we're talking about something very important, which concerns our identity, our very, very private lives that are inside our computers, and also a financially very important problem. This evening, to be able to talk about safety and the net, we have the greatest expert in Italy, the first one to study these problems in Italy, Professor Marco Mezzalama. I'd like to thank him very much for being here. He has written 150 papers on this topic and on the Turin Polytechnic, where he graduated a few years ago and where he first became an assistant and then vice chancellor and many other positions, and where he formed a group. In particular, he has been involved in the e-signature safety. For example, e-banking is one of his areas. He's the greatest Italian expert in this field and the first one to study IT viruses. I was talking about the department he set up here in Turin, and we have a representative here, Luca Filippi. He is obviously an IT engineer, graduated here in Turin. He too is working in a research group, and he is also CEO of a company which deals with IT safety. His role here is very important because I believe that it'll help us understand how we can force our way into a computer, which is not exactly what we'd like to teach you. We don't want to teach you that. We want to teach you the fact that you have to beware of defending of the dangers, and therefore defending yourselves and keeping your computer safe. Professor Mezzalama, the floor to you.
Vi ringrazio di essere così numerosi. Cercherò.
Good evening to you all. I would like to thank you for being here and for being so many people here this evening. With you, I will be trying to debate some of these problems, this liquid internet, which is a system that we all use, that is pervasive, and which has become, amongst other things, has also become a battlefield. Why? Well, because internet is being used by the more or less formal armies as if it were a battleground. Here I have taken 2 or 3 references from the news in the past 2 or 3 days, referring to the terrorist act that took place in Paris. And if you go and see the news that the news contained, the television broadcast, radio broadcast, you see that after that, the secret services of the various countries started a struggle against ISIS, trying to block their websites because ISIS in turn counterattacked. For example, it managed to clone a Facebook page of the USA Central Command for Safety and Security. In fact, we read this in the past few days. I can't remember. It was a newspaper. I can't remember if it was the press agency or the Stampa. The activists of the free web, the ones that are called anonymous, have announced that they will be attacking, and they have attacked the ISIS websites. So we're talking about a war which may seem to concern others, but in fact it concerns us too. If we go back in time, this is December, here you see that there was that big mess-up which North Korea is said to have created against Sony, with reference to the release of the movie, which was never released in the end because it was the interview. Why? Because North Korea believed that it damaged its image. So what is the result of all this? The result is that Internet, the IT tool, is also a tool which has become a battleground between gangs, so to speak, terrorist gangs, but also among the military. Here, this is a piece of information that says that a malware was built by the Western secret services. It's called Regin, to sniff, so to speak, what is happening in some nations. But, and this is certainly a very important one, this was a virus called Stuxnet that was produced by the US and Israeli services to attack the Iranian nuclear power stations. And it became famous because it was the first virus that managed to penetrate not our computers, but an industrial system, and was able to, or at least tried to, damage the industrial system. So it's Internet and all these tools that, because Internet per se is like a square, an open square. The issue is whether you fight with a knife or with a sword, or whether you embrace each other. And at this point, it's also a battlefield. I am going to talk about the dark side of technology because it's nothing to do with the Internet. Each and every technology that we use has a dark side. I always give this example. We are not only Internet dependent or addicted, but we're more addicted of electricity. Imagine what our lives would be without electricity. We wouldn't have light. We wouldn't certainly have the year of light. There'd be no fridges, dishwashers, trains. Electricity is something that we take for granted, but without which we would be dead. But in Italy, several hundred people in Italy die electrocuted every year. So there's a dark side. I gave that example, which sometimes I mention. If you think that we talk about gunpowder, it was first developed in China many hundreds of years ago for fireworks. So, in other words, it was part of leisure. But when it came to the West, it was immediately used with the ancient rifles and the ancient bullets. So technology is something that, if used in an unethical manner or not too ethical manner, may lead to wars and to other dangerous phenomena. But let us leave the armies aside, because people can say ISIS can do what they wish, so can the CIA. But in fact, as our friend Bianucci was saying, it's something which concerns us, because in our everyday lives we have to do with the Internet that has become pervasive. And on the net there are a series of rather unpleasant possible risks. This is from the Post Police. They, for example, say there's a virus, CryptoLocker, It enters your computer and then crypts your files. Then you can no longer open the files unless you pay a ransom, so to speak, or if you don't want to call it a ransom, you could call it tax that you're paying crime. But there are things that do not only concern individuals, but for example, also distribution chains. Home Depot is one of the largest e-sale organization for fridges, washing machines, so on. Hackers have stolen over 50 million customer email addresses because the problem to penetrate in your computers is to take what is called an identity. That is to say, some of your data, because thanks to your data, you manage to then intrude, or in any case, you manage to understand what modes you have to access the net, or how you access the net. This is from La Stampa, the 11th of November. Pirates hit again the American post, and there has been a great theft. But figures are really, really outstanding. Here you see there are 12 victims of IT crimes a second. 378 million victims per year. Well, people say, I must beware. I must be aware of diseases, but I must also be aware of IT diseases. This is a scenario that is changing. At one time, there were only viruses, and there were maybe university students making them, while now this has become a tool of organized crime. It's a scenario that changes because what we have been trying to defend and what people have been trying to steal is people's identity. One of the most obvious problems is when you steal a person's identity on Facebook. Then you have, for example, you steal the access key and then you post it. Somebody could post something on my Facebook page. As I was mentioning with the journalist earlier on, the world is becoming liquid also individually, because at this point, anonymity and secrecy no longer pertains to us. Coming here on a bus, I could hear a little girl who was talking. I heard, take it with her boyfriend, and she was saying things in public that when I was a youngster, you didn't even tell your confessor. If you travel on a train, sometimes it is rather embarrassing or annoying because everybody speaks on their mobile, and if you're listening in, you can steal information and you can understand or see some of the aspects of their lives. So this society has become liquid, has become a way in which everybody represents themselves, and there are people who very often try to take our place. Why? Why would you steal an identity? Well, you do it basically for the same reasons that I was mentioning earlier on, because you want to access reserved systems. For example, if you steal your bank password, then you have access to somebody else's current account. But what I've shown below is, which is also happening and is becoming very important, is that you can steal passwords so as to publish or things which are different from the ones that the person would do on their Facebook. So social networks are becoming one of the most interesting objects for these people because, in fact, by stealing this identity and passwords, you can take somebody's place, and this person will appear on the network as a completely different person. In fact, by stealing passwords and identity, you can take somebody's place, and this person very often will appear on the network as a completely different persona. How do you do this? What are the tools to carry out this theft? Well, it's basically software. In fact, sometimes it's our naivety too that helps, but these are the tools which are called normally malware. It comes from malicious software. That is to say, pieces of programs that were clearly written by a human being and which try to hide, to spread in a hidden manner compared to the traditional user. And these are viruses, worms, and Trojan horses. A virus is a program which hides in another program so we can't see them, and which have rather interesting features. That is to say, they replicate. Here you see, I brought this and I'm showing you here. This is the first human artifact, an IT virus, able to auto-reproduce themselves. We duplicate objects, but once these objects have been created, that's what it is. For example, somebody built this table, but this table will not be able to generate another one because reproduction or self-reproduction has been something which pertained to life, which pertained to human beings, all of us. Well, here we could talk about IT and the future of the relationship between computers and human beings. These viruses are objects which were thought of, conceived as von Neumann in 1949, when he said, in the end, this technology is a self-replicating technology. Programs can be replicated. So, well, then it appeared to be rather unlikely and impossible, but that's what it is. Because what do these programs do? Well, once they have been hidden, or they hide, they then take the computer over. At this point, we could debate this at length, but let us try and simplify it. They take the computer over, and at this point, they basically do two things. First of all, they control all the things that you do. They connect to the rest of the world or to a certain number of places in the world, and they send the information to it. So these viruses basically, once they have transmitted the information, start a mechanism of reproduction. Therefore, they go onto another computer, they hide again in other files, and from this computer they go to another one, which is what I defined as self-replication. This is very interesting from the IT point of view, a cybernetic point of view, because it is, or it becomes very similar to animal biology and human biology. In any case, one might here outline a scenario which is like a science fiction movie, like Odyssey, and Minsky, who was one of the great thinkers of artificial intelligence, maybe in a rather abrupt way said, human beings are the missing link between the chimp and a computer. Basically saying that computers in the future, and I hope in a distant future personally, will become a sort of in collective being which or who will possibly dominate us. Well, future will tell. I wanted to show you this slide, which if you look at it, those dots are growing, the number of dots. You see it here? There are very few and there are very, very many. This is the real time with which a virus spreads. Look at it. Not many. They started in some computers, then they attacked the others. Can you see that the red is spreading and they're growing, increasing the world throughout? This is a virus, which is quite old because it's 2001, which was called Red Code. And in 9 minutes, it attacked thousands of computers. So what do they basically do? They do the things written here, which I've already discussed. Techniques to enter a computer. There are more or less refined ones, but we're not going to talk about them now. They, therefore, are in the computer. They have to hide in the memory of your computer. They must hide to get you and also the antiviruses. So there are some very refined and sophisticated techniques in this struggle between virus and antivirus, where viruses mutate. They change so that their physiognomy is not so apparent to the antiviruses. They hide. And then they control what is happening. For example, what you have, for example, keying in. If you are connected to your e-account, to your e-banking, they will take your password. Will you realize? No, you won't. And then your password, what will it do? It will be transmitted or sent to someone. And as I was saying, this someone can also be a criminal organization. Then once this has been done, they can also, and in fact normally they do this, they spread because they're viruses, so they try to find another computer or they infect a file. Then you take a pen drive, you put it in another computer, and that's it. Because if and when you activate that program, then it's an infected program. It'll take the other computer over, it'll take the files, it'll replicate, and so on and so forth. And then it can generate malicious actions. The one, for example, Doomsnet, is not simply that only wanted to replicate, it wanted to go inside the nuclear power station control systems and destroy them. There are some viruses that delete files, but alongside that there are actions that are malicious. Sometimes they can also be jokes. For example, there's one of them called ping pong, the ping pong virus that somebody said or started in the office of a professor at the Turin Polytechnic, but I won't talk about it. It was 89. And what did the virus do? It didn't do anything. I mean, people got a bit annoyed with it, but that was it. There was a ball that went on, and at one point you had this ball that went up and down and all, and there was another one, which I always found very pleasant, the one that made the letters fall. You wrote something, and there was a letter, Marco, and down went the... sometimes I would see people bending down to pick them up. And I'll tell you a short story now. When we were talking, well, now we're a bit more aware of these, but we're talking about the middle of the 80s, the mid-80s, and I remember that at the Poly we started the IT labs, and we used to send the youngsters. So at one point, a woman phoned me and she said, "Excuse me, I would like to ask you something personal, if you don't mind, but please do, because my son has registered in the first year and he attends the IT labs. And I've been told that there are viruses. Should he wear gloves? Should he go to the doctor?" Here you can see a classic attack, which is the one that, for example, ISIS or Anonymous is doing against ISIS. Because one of the ways in which you can destroy or create a problem with a website is that you block it. If you want to attack eBay, what do? You want eBay not to sell anymore. So to a degree, you have to make this website inaccessible. These are called denial of service or DOS, denial of service. How do they start? Well, this is what is happening. This is what the secret services are doing against ISIS. There's someone, the hacker, whether the hacker is lawful or unlawful, that scan the internet. They say, "Let us see if I can get hold of a few computers." They do that, and at that point they identify systems that can be attacked, that are weak. Then, in these systems that they have penetrated, they install a software that we call zombie. Why? Because like zombies, it stays there and it doesn't budge. No one perceives it. It stays there. This starts from a computer that doesn't infect 10 computers, but 10,000. Say there are 10,000 zombies. Maybe on my computer there is a zombie now. Well, it's off, so. The only safe PC is the one which has been switched off. At this point, you have the software which is hidden. Then, the hackers decide which is the master server, because I am the devil on the left. I mustn't make myself traceable. I must make it very difficult for people to identify me. So amongst all the systems, I identify one that I appoint as master server. Then, once we have chosen a master server, you identify an objective. Say eBay or Amazon. Amazon lost a lot of money because of an attack like this. They decided that that's the one to attack. The initial hacker, in a rather subtle way, tells the master server to attack the system. And the master server the user doesn't know anything. No, the master server is not aware. But, as I was saying, the hacker appoints one, but the master server is only the master server because it screens the hacker. At that point, the attack starts. In that, the master server tells all the other zombies, attack. To tell the computer to attack, that means I must be connected to it in a hidden way, etc., etc. Very refined techniques. And at this point, the zombies attacked, all of them attack. And what does this mean? It means that say that there's a door and there's a large number of people. Nobody can get through. It just blocks it. So if a lot of computers try to access a website, since there is a lot of them, no one gets in. But these don't access. But it is also true, say if it's Amazon, that the users can't attack it. So it's no longer visible. You try to connect to that website, the website says, no, I'm not there. This is one of the aspects. So who are those? We saw it in the past, it was young students. Now there's organized mafia, so that's why you talk about cyber mafia. Here I have two figures. In July 2010, the first case of hackers being arrested in this way. He was, I can't remember why, but his nickname was Izerdo. He was a Slav, and there was a search warrant out for him because he had created viruses. In fact, he had created a system to create viruses that he sold to crime. And it's a bit like a weapons dealer. It was a historical case because he didn't personally attack, but you went there, paid him, and he gave you what you wanted. Then we know how important it is if you go to the FBI website, where there are all the major crimes and criminals. And here you have cyber's most wanted, and here they are. For example, John Gordon Baden, as you can see, was captured. What had he done? I'm reading because you can't really see it properly from the audience, but he had stolen the access keys to the people's bank accounts. Not 10, 40,000 people. This gentleman here, who does very much the same thing, bank accounts. If I take your internet bank account, I'll take money from it. And if I'm careful, I won't steal all you have. I'll start stealing €1, then €1 and £1.50. There was a woman who was 80 in the 90s who did this. She was then discovered by chance. So she accessed and took, because she was British, she took some pennies out of a pound, and there was 0.7375. But if you multiplied 0.53 by a million, then they're substantial figures. How do they get to us? Well, either through emails or supports or advertising. Sometimes you get that advertising. If you click on it, that's the end of you. Here, I'm going to skip a bit. Here is something else, which is called social engineering. It's called phishing, technically. But it's really phishing those who will believe you. One of the easiest way to get your data is to send an email, which might appear to be interesting. Maybe it looks as if it comes from your bank, but then instead it tells you, well, open the attachment because there's a form, and there in the form there's a beautiful virus. This is very attractive for men, and if it says install the email because you will be able to chat with the beauty, a lot of males will do it. But in the Monica.exe there is a virus, in fact a Trojan horse, that will take all the information. Most frequently used password is 123456. It's like taking your wallet and leave it in the parked car in full sight. I'm moving on because I don't want to steal too much of your time, but I would like to explain the technologies that underlie this. So when you pay with a credit card or give your bank PIN number, what happens? The technology which defends us, not always, as Luca will say, but which is quite safe, is ciphering, cryptography, which is one of the oldest systems of the world, because the ciphers is the second oldest job in the world. I won't mention what the first one is. Cryptography started with a civilization because in 4500 BC, Sumers and Egyptians used it. Julius Caesar, in the Gallic campaigns, developed it, and in the 15th and 16th centuries, for example, Leon Battista Alberti, who's a famous architect, also developed them. The history was then accelerated, and you will have seen, many of you will have seen the imitation game, Enigma. Here you see the German machine, and that was the machine that was used for what? Well, to create a cipher of the information, and cryptography is essential to hide information. So the system works a bit like this. It takes information and then using a key that very often must remain secret, transforms that information into a sequence which cannot be easily understood. So you start with a sequence that is clear, and you end up with one that isn't clear. But this blender, so to speak, they're very interesting mixers or blenders. They take the result and they re-transform it in the original sequence. They translate it. All this on the basis of a key, which is a secret key. For example, what did Julius Caesar do? It's called Caesar's cryptography. In fact, he needed to inform the generals that were posted throughout the Gaul to attack on a certain day. But if he sent a messenger who knew about this, the Gauls would have taken the messenger and tortured him, and then the messenger would give the secret. So at this point, we needed the messenger not to know the secret. So what did Caesar do? Caesar did something like this. He convened his generals, and then they decided one number, 3, for instance. And only he and the commanders knew about it, and not the messengers. At this point, he wrote and replaced the letters, replacing the third that came after. So, for example, A became D, B became E, and so on, so forth, which meant that attack on, say, the 17th became an unintelligible sequence. And how could you reread it? Well, only knowing that key 3, because if you knew what 3 was, then you could reverse it. But the messenger didn't know what this was. If, for instance, you wrote, tomorrow I will attack, if the message was tomorrow attacked, and then you used a key like 3, this is what it became. Then there are various techniques. Enigma was very complicated from this and sophisticated from this point of view. Then there are transpositions. For example, you exchange syllables. So if you take Marco Mezzalama, you take the first two letters, you divide the message with segments, and then you exchange it again. You must know that you're taking two. If it's secret, you can't understand it. All these aspects also have to do with our lives, because many people stupidly write on their ATM card what the PIN number is. So when they steal their wallet, they too are in a difficult position. So a bit of cryptography is something you could use. For example, you must remember a secret. You remember a number which, they say, could be 13. Say that the secret code is 12543. Then you take each one of these figures and add 13 and then write it. You can write it because then when you have to use it, what you have to do is you have to subtract. It's a very simple system, but in everyday life it is very useful. Then, this was the big cryptographic revolution that made it possible to have e-commerce. And this was organized and invented by these two people, Whitfield and Hellman, at the end of the last century, the end of the 20th century, the 80s. And they solved the problem of the so-called sharing of the secret. Because if you're purchasing or want to purchase, say, a book on Amazon, and then you have to transfer your credit card, you can use Caesar's system, but first you have to go to the US with Amazon and share the secret with them. And that's more expensive than purchasing the book. So these gentlemen invented a system which was then developed by MIT specialists who then left the university and became RSA. RSA is one of the richest companies at the present time, and they created what is called an asymmetrical system. That is to say, a system to cipher you use one key, and to decode you use another one. That is to say, it's the same asymmetrical lock. It's a box where you need one key to close it, but you can't open it with that key. You need another key to open it. You have to have the other key to open it. So basically you have two keys, one that closes and one that opens. What happens? Each person has two keys, generates two keys. One key is the key that is private and one is public. And with a mechanism like this, you can pay. Say that I want to share a secret with my daughter. I take the public key, my daughter's public key. She can give it to me, she can tell me, whatever. And everybody else is also informed. I close my secret with that. The fact that the other people have the key to close doesn't matter, because the only thing they can do is close it, but they can't open it. Who can open it? Only the person who has the matching key. Who has the matching key? Julia, my daughter. So at this point, if she keeps it, so if she is stupid and she hands the other key, well, then it's a problem. But if she keeps it secret, she's the only one who can open it. This is exactly what happens when you connect to a bank. For example, you have to pay on Amazon. Amazon generates a public key and a private key. They keep the private key. They send you on the net, which is you can see. You take the public key, you close it with the number of the credit card, you send it through the net. The fact that others have the public key is absolutely immaterial, because they can't open it. When it gets to Amazon, Amazon opens it. But internet, but also mobiles and tablets, because there's not just a computer. In fact, our phones are computers, and therefore there is something which is absolutely new, which is means the malware also spreads through tablets, phones, and it is growing very rapidly. So not only must you be aware of your computers, but you must also be aware in particular when you download apps, because by downloading apps from uncertified websites, but if it says, I will be giving you 250 t-shirts if you download me. Well, how can I defend myself? Well, I think to defend oneself you need three things. First of all, awareness. You must be aware that the internet has a dark side. You must beware and be careful, because if you write the password on a post-it and then you leave it on your computer, you're not very bright. And then you must have tools, which are IT tools. I'll give you a very brief reference on for example, on how the antiviruses work. If it is true that a virus is a program within a program, I must try and find this program, but it's as if I had hidden the first canto of the Divine Comedy inside my thesis. And if I have to look in a book to see if we have the first canto of the Divine Comedy, I will put a string of words, that is to say, in the middle of my life, nel mezzo del cammino di nostra vita. So what do? They scan and they look for a signature. The signature is the identification of a virus. The last point is a very important fact. Bear these in mind that these are crimes and that the criminal code has introduced them and has introduced a series of new laws whereby you are punished. Thank you very much.
Adesso sentiamo la seconda parte di questa chiacchierata.
Come diceva Marco, i motivi per cui si fanno
As Marco was saying, the reasons why you have cybercrime have changed in the course of time. While initially it was basically fun, now there are illegal motivations, financial, political and religious, or prestige. There are several ways in which you can carry these activities out. The most dangerous ones are in a parallel network, which is called the dark net, but we can access it easily. And unlike the transactions that we do with a credit card, which uses euros, dollars, or some other form of currency, normally you pay with a virtual coin, which is called a Bitcoin. This coinage is used, this currency is used by cyber criminals or cyber warriors, according to the type of activities that they're carrying out. In the dark net, you can purchase information, tools, or illegal devices. For example, this is one of the most important websites of the darknet. Here you can see the list of material that you can purchase, and in this case, there's a forgery, identity forgery are being offered with the stolen identities, which we were mentioning a few minutes ago. For example, I could purchase a German identity card or other tools to generate it, but not just that. Talk about something physical, I could buy a skimmer with a video camera, which are the tools that are positioned on ATM points and which are used to clone the ATM cards and to steal the PIN number. Here it says, for example, the price in Bitcoin, 4.4 Bitcoins, and this sophisticated system will also offer the current exchange of Bitcoin to dollar. But when I did it, one Bitcoin was about $220, so 4.4 is virtually $1,000, and you can purchase the do-it-yourself system to clone an ATM card. However, the most fashionable thing is the stealing data to steal their identity. They're called fools, and it's name, surname, first name, surname, address, the social security number, the US social security number, date of birth, mother's name, bank's name, bank account number, and so on. These are very cheap, 0.022 Bitcoins. You can also purchase PayPal accounts, verified PayPal accounts. I don't know if you can read it, but it basically says that they're guaranteed. So if you purchase one that doesn't work, you can have a replacement free. But you can also purchase something which is slightly more harmful. In this case, here you can see, you can't see the price, but about if I remember, $1,000 or $1,500, you can get a gun or a rifle. If you need the munitions, you can buy one. But if you're happy enough with a gun, a handgun, it's much cheaper than a machine gun. If, on the other hand, you love drugs, you have a variety here. 14,000 types, and you can pay in Bitcoins and receive them home. While these are websites that show you the attacks that are taking place in the world. If we have time, I can connect and show you. And I wanted to show you something which is a bit more amusing, which is the proof that what Marco was talking about, that is to say, ciphers in the course of information transmission, is not the solution of all IT security problems. In fact, if you go on a bank website, normally that is given as safe if there's a lock on it, and if you get a message like this which says that the connection with this website is safe. The problem is that this message should be taken for what it is. That is to say, the connection is safe, but it doesn't say anything else about the rest of the system and the chain, because I'm a client. So on this side, through the internet, I connect to a server that gives the service to one of the people at the bank. I have channels that are ciphered because there's that little lock, so that is guaranteed. But in fact, it doesn't say anything about the state of the server, nor of my client side, which could be a personal computer or any other type of device. So if I want to attack, obviously, where am I going to act? I'm going to act on the client or on the server. I'm not going to waste any time to try and attack the channel, because the channel is safe. Attacks normally are possible under certain conditions. The most frequent ones, the lack of updates of the operative system and of the programs which are on the personal computer or on the server, or that your credentials are too weak, for example, like a password which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, according to the statistics. It's the most frequently used one, or taking advantage on the attacks which question people's credibility and also the fact that they believe it. They're a bit gullible, in other words. We're talking about phishing. And when they send some false links that resemble the other ones, and that people are generally curious or believe what comes via the email or internet, and so they open the emails or the attachments that are sent to them. And as I said, a bit gullible. While he's trying to carry out an attack, my computer is off. Well, I just wanted to say that he rightly stressed the fact that when you talk about cryptography, you're talking about connection. Connection might be safe, but our computer may not be safe. So the problem is that if and when you have been attacked by a virus, and at that point the virus will pick up anything you key in on the keyboard, then it's nothing to do with the connection. You're weak. Security is the result of your PC and the network. The security of your PC is fundamental, because if you haven't got that, the collective or the outcome result of your safety system will collapse. If we talk about companies such as Ferrari and Mazzanari, designers have hard disks that are ciphered, so that even if they steal the files, at this point they cannot interpret the information. And the employees of this company do this. Let us try here to enter Bianucci's computer. Many people are naive. I'm naive. That little machine that the machine gave me, is that the box which is the first key, the second key? Is that the key, the bank key? More or less. More or less. Because first, you have the first key, once I've established the securest channel with the first key, second key, that in some way the software does it automatically, that when I'm connected to the bank sends the public key and keeps the private one, and the public one is taken by my software, and the software at this point asks you for that number. When you introduce that number, then you cipher it, and I've at that point made the channel and not my computer safe. The key means that I can, because the password changes every 30 seconds, even if they steal it after 30 seconds, the password is unusable. So either I'm very, very fast, or either I can steal it in 29 seconds. It's called two-factor authentication, because as well as the password, it requires a second password, which is a temporary password. Now, just to show you, what am I doing? I'm using a Linux distribution. It's a Linux version, which is specifically organized for these attacks. It's open source, and inside it, it's got a series of tools that make it possible to use vulnerabilities of the system. Why? Well, because there are people who carry out research on vulnerability within the systems, and once vulnerabilities are found, they publish them on the internet so that they can be overcome. In fact, first they contact the software manufacturer, then they agree, and then they produce the patch. The patch is released after a certain amount of time, a certain number of days, usually a month. Jointly, they agree the publication of vulnerability, so that vulnerability becomes a public domain, but in fact all the users have already installed patches and therefore have solved the problem. In this case, for instance, I am trying to attack this Windows 7 machine. I'm a normal user. I have a desktop. My only problem is that I haven't updated it as I should have. Then, with the system, I'm the attacker now. I launch my kit, and through email or another system, I'm sending a link to my victim with inside the address of my machine, which you have to connect to if everything works. When the user, for example, goes onto their email and clicks on the link in the email, I'm just doing it very briefly, so I'm keying it in here in the browser. The person will connect. Apparently nothing happens. I go back to my Linux machine. Where something is happening. From the point of view of the user, Internet Explorer has had problems, but we basically haven't seen anything. At this point, if I look and I go and check, I see that the machines are now connected. The attacker is connected to the Windows machine. Not yet finished. Here it should be finished by now. I can connect to the machine in remote and start to carry out commands, for example, ls, and I could see that on the remote desktop there is a document called secret document txt. I could download it or I can do other things. What we're going to do now is the following thing. Here I have entered the Windows 7 PC, but I've gone with a test as a test user. Beware of the fact that I have never, in fact, put a password, but because there was a lack of an update, I managed to get in, so passwords are not always useful. Now I have to become the administrator. So I could do many more things compared to what I can do now. For example, I could install other software or download the credentials of all the users of this machine to try and find their passwords for other sites. So I will now stop a second. And I will try and become the administrator of this other machine, this other PC. I'm doing it all by hand, but in fact you can do it through a script that does it automatically. As Marco was saying, there are kits that are sold on the website that I was showing you before, and that contain ready-made programs that do all these things automatically. I'd like to say that at this moment we have entered the computer of a person who the person thought was protected. He is writing through the keyboard commands for a machine that is somewhere else, and we could take all the documents from it, all the secret data. So other than the commands that are difficult to interpret, but what is happening is that there is a machine that clearly was on and that clearly was protected, and we entered that machine, no one realized, and we are working on it. Am I right? Yep, that's right. Now, if you look at the answer, we have, at this point, I have all the privileges in a Microsoft system, so I can do anything. For example, I can dump the so-called credentials. These strings that you can see here represent the name of the user, the group they belong to, and here you see the numbers and figures is the password of the user in a ciphered manner. If I download these credentials and I put it in a text file from my PC, so working completely separately from the users that I have accessed, I can try and crack it. That is to say, I can try and reconvert them, decrypt. Why should I do this? Because in this way, I, in fact, entered without knowing the password. If I find it, maybe I could use this password to enter the email, because they might use the same password, and possibly in the email I can find the credentials for the bank, or I can do those things like send me the link to reset the password and enter all his or her accounts. But I can also do things which are a bit nicer, like this. That is to say, to launch a sniffer for the keyboard. In this moment, we're on a machine. We haven't prepared this. There's someone in this moment. We entered their machine. I hope that the police aren't here, because we could be arrested. We're only doing it for teaching purposes, If I go to my document, because it contained something that said my password is password, my new password is Pluto. And it didn't capture anything. Well, this happened. That's, as someone would say, it's the advantage of going live. But we have to conclude here. I'll just show you one more thing very briefly. I can do the same thing in the case of servers. For example, I have an imaginary website where it says Fiat Chrysler has lost 20 points following the information on return to Turin. I can do the same thing with a server. And modify or change so for example here, reloading, instead of loss you have gains. and I could influence all the shareholders' markets. In this case, I entered the servers without using a password, but simply exploiting the fact that the server had not been updated. So, in conclusion, remember your updates.
Il malfunzionamento, devo farlo,
And
conviene farlo.
when a program falls and I'm asked to inform this, is it the best thing? Yes.
Sì, eccola. Buonasera.
It shouldn't happen, but yes.
Buonasera.
Let's see if there are any
Ho
questions.
letto tempo
evening.
fa un libro di Kevin D.
Good evening.
un famoso hacker.
A while ago, I read a book by Kevin D. Mitnick, a famous US hacker who's already been arrested several times, where he was talking about a particular type of IT attacks, which you mentioned, that is to say, social engineering, which is take advantage of people's gullibility to gain reserved information. Let us say that this is an easier way to carry out an IT attack when the method that has been used now, that is to say commands, and becomes complicated, such as, for example, attacking systems that are defended by the latest, more advanced RSA systems that was invented in the 70s and 80s and still hasn't been cracked. To what extent should an hacker or can an hacker push with the more classical attacks, trying to force safety, but in a hidden manner? And when in theory, at that point, they should take advantage of the people who are operating out. So where we have to be protected is see that do not give that person the advantage. I can, in a summary, I mean, it would require a sociological approach as well as others, but every thief has his or her techniques. There are those who work with very sophisticated techniques and those who follow techniques of social engineering, as you were mentioning. And it really depends who you're going to attack, because the problem is, according to who you want to attack, you have to use a particular technique. If, for instance, that house is well guarded and has a very good anti-theft alarm, well, then you must have techniques that are very sophisticated. So you move towards a technologically more advanced solution. If the house is a little less protected, or if it's protected, but when the owner doesn't set the alarm on when he or she goes out with the dog, well, then it's worthless. So I think social engineering is what is most dangerous for normal people, because you get these emails where it says it comes from the bank, and then you go to read and it says bank.iit.ro. Well, bear in mind that internet addresses, as you know, in the last segment, very often it gives the identification of the country. But if you put bank.it.ro, it means that that is not in Italy but in Romania. But if you don't realize that and you receive an email where it says your password has expired, then you must be careful. Never open it. Never open it. Open it only very often. They're also written in a very bad Italian. That's another thing which is very important. I was about to say that very often bad Italian, or they refer to you in the informal form, like the tu in Italian. There's symptoms, but you must have those precautions that you would have in your everyday life on theft and on what you would do if, for example, if you have your wallet, you keep it a bit hidden. You be careful. When you pull it out, you look left and you look right. You must have a little of that caution. I believe that at this particular moment, unlike what happens in the past, these techniques have been used to gather information, so you have to be careful. Be careful when they say we have blocked your account because there has been an attempt. What they're trying to do is to gather information. I would like to thank Professor Marco Mezzalama very much for all the things that he told us, and thank you very much. I was a bit shocked by the technological ability of our hacker, a former hacker, now professional of security, Luca, Filippi, and I think that, if anything, we've all received a message, that is to say, keep your eyes peeled, better be wary than trusty, in this field like many others. Thanks.